Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
I used to believe love was a quiet thing, something you earned by being good, patient, and small enough not to take up space. In the Owen household, that theory was tested every single day. Verity, my older sister, was the family's golden light. The voice that filled rooms, the name on every cake, the reason every photo frame tilted her way. I, on the other hand, was the shadow that held the light in place. Penny, you should be more like your sister, my mother would sigh, folding Verity's graduation dress, as if it were silk spun by angels. You don't shine enough. You're too quiet. I was 16 when I realized they didn't see me. Not really. At Verity's 18th birthday, I watched as my parents handed her a delicate silver key tied to a red ribbon. Your condo in the city, Dad announced, eyes glistening. The room erupted in applause. I stood there with an empty glass of punch and a heart that felt like glass cracking from within. Don't look like that, Verity whispered, leaning close. It's not my fault they love me more. Her smile was gentle and cruel. I wanted to scream, it's not love if it leaves someone starving for it. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled back, swallowing the truth like something toxic I'd learned to live with. 2 months later, when I received my acceptance letter to university, my parents' response was a polite shrug. That's great, Penny, Mom said, eyes still glued to Verity's magazine feature. But you know, we can't help you financially. You're on your own now. It wasn't anger that filled me, it was a kind of hollow peace, like I'd finally stopped expecting warmth from a frozen sea. That night, as Verity's laughter echoed down the hallway, I packed my things. No tears, no goodbyes, just a silent promise. One day you'll see me. When I stepped out of that house, the moon hung low, watching me walk toward a future built not from privilege but from pain. And deep inside, I swore I would never vanish again. The first winter on my own felt like punishment. My dorm room was so small that when I breathed, the walls seemed to close in. I worked double shifts at the campus cafe, poured coffee for students whose parents wired them money every week, and studied by the light of a flickering desk lamp I'd found in a dumpster. Every coin mattered. I skipped meals, patched my coat with thread from old socks, and whispered promises to myself that it wouldn't always be this way. But some nights, when the snow fell thick and silent outside, I wondered if anyone would notice if I disappeared completely. One afternoon, as I wiped tables with numb hands, Professor Taylor stopped by the cafe. You're Penny Owen, aren't you? The one who wrote an essay on the restoration of the Earth's ozone layer? I blinked, startled. Yes. I'm sorry, it's not very. It's brilliant, she interrupted gently. Don't you dare apologize for being extraordinary. No one had ever said that to me before. Her words thawed something frozen inside. She offered me a position as her assistant in the environmental research department. It wasn't just a job. It was a hand reaching through the dark. Years passed in a blur of sleepless nights and relentless drive. I earned my PhD, defended my thesis on ways to solve the problem of global warming, and built a biotech startup from scratch. Investors laughed at first, until results silenced them. And yet, every victory carried the same bitter undertone. At conferences, my mother would post Verity's vacation photos instead of attending my presentations. When the local newspaper published my photo on the front page, highlighting the scientific achievements of the state's youth, she texted, "Don't get too proud, Penny. Pride ruins good girls." That night, I sat in my office overlooking the city I'd conquered. Outside, snowflakes drifted past the glass, soft, relentless, indifferent. I whispered to my reflection, if this is pride, then let it keep me warm. Absorbed in my work, I didn't notice how 5 years had flown by. Success has a strange way of drawing ghosts back to life. The day I was featured on the cover of Scientific Vision, my estranged mother called me for the first time in years. Her voice was soft, sugar-laced, trembling with something that almost sounded like love. "Penny, darling, I've missed you. Can we talk?" Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at an upscale restaurant overlooking the harbor, her choice, not mine. She looked older, her once glossy hair now streaked with gray, her perfume faint but familiar. For a moment, I almost reached across the table. "I'm proud of you," she said, her eyes glistening. "You've done what no one in our family could." The warmth in her tone broke something in me. I never stopped wishing you'd say that, I whispered. She smiled, then slid an envelope across the table. But success comes with responsibility, Penny. You owe me $1.3 million for your upbringing and your heart treatments. I kept every receipt. It took a heartbeat for her words to sink in. My throat tightened. You're joking, I said. I gave you life, she snapped, her sweetness evaporating. You'd be dead without me. It's time you repay that debt. I stood, my chair scraping against the marble floor. You didn't give me life. You only taught me how to survive without love. People were watching, but I didn't care. I left her there with her envelope of betrayal and the faint echo of my own footsteps breaking inside me. That night, I started writing a letter to my mother stating that raising children is the responsibility of those who gave birth to them, namely their parents, and it should be done out of love, not as a business. Then I burned the letter in the fireplace because I realized that my mother would never understand. As the ashes curled, I whispered, trembling, "You can't invoice motherhood." And for the first time in my life, I felt the fire of freedom burn brighter than pain. 2 years passed before I saw her again. By then, my company had expanded across 3 continents, and I had built a quiet life wrapped in solitude. Then one autumn morning, a letter arrived, handwritten, trembling, sealed with a faint scent of lavender. It was from my mother. She was ill, alone. Verity, her golden daughter, had stopped visiting months ago. The letter ended with 6 fragile words. I have nowhere else to go, Penny. I sat frozen, the paper shaking in my hands. Logic said ignore it, but my heart, foolish and faithful, whispered go. When I reached her apartment, I almost didn't recognize her. The woman who once demanded luxury now lived in a dim room where the curtains hung like wilted petals. On the nightstand lay something etchingly familiar, a red ribbon, frayed and faded, tied around a stack of unpaid bills. Do you remember? She asked weakly. Your sister's condo. I thought that ribbon meant love. But love can't be bought, can it? Tears blurred my vision. You still kept it, I murmured. She smiled faintly. I keep all my mistakes. I didn't move closer, but I didn't leave either. I set up a trust to cover her care. Not out of duty, but mercy. Verity refused to help, too busy flaunting her new designer line online. As I walked out, the red ribbon caught the breeze and fluttered to the floor. I picked it up and put it back on the table. Outside, the city lights shimmered like forgiveness I would never ask for. I whispered, some gifts burn. Others teach you how to heal. The day my mother passed, the nurse handed me a small velvet box she'd left behind. Inside was the red ribbon, pressed flat, fragile as memory. Beneath it lay a note in her handwriting. I finally saw you, Penny. You were always the light. Forgive me, dear, for everything. I stood there, tears streaming down my face. I cried out, why, Mom? Why is everything so difficult in this life? Of course I forgive you. I've always loved you, but for some reason you never noticed me. I sat in my office that night, the city glowing beneath me, and cried for the child who had waited her whole life to be seen, and for the woman who had learned she no longer needed to be. Verity didn't come to the funeral. She sent a text, too much to handle. I didn't reply. I simply watched the last shovel of earth fall, soft and final, and whispered, rest, Mom. The debt is paid, not in money but mercy. Months later, I stood before a classroom of young women in white coats, speaking about resilience and renewal. You owe no one the price of your survival, I told them. You are not defined by who abandoned you, but by who you chose to become. When I left the lecture hall, I tied the red ribbon around a campus oak, letting it flutter free in the wind. And for the first time, I felt whole.
Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.